Awesome. So we have Akshat and we have Anshul with us. Good evening, everyone. Let's get started. So here's a quick agenda of what we are planning to do. We'll have a quick session where we'll discuss various career options within the blockchain industry and how you can get started, as well as how you can think about the blockchain industry. And also from a kind of a future vision perspective. So maybe you want to build specific skills, what kind of skills you could be building, or how you should be looking at this industry as well. So I'll with that being said, I'll just give maybe a quick cue, and let's get started with Anshul from an insider's perspective. Then maybe we'll also get get a take from Akshat on the same. So Anshul, how do you see the world of blockchain from a career perspective, given the fact that there are not as many degrees that would, so for example, if I want to become an electronics engineer, I can practically go to any college, right? But with blockchain, things are not as straightforward. How do you see this field? How do you feel people can get started?
Sure. I hope I'm audible and there's no problem with the audio quality. I think it's a interesting point that you asked, which is there are obviously a lack of structured courses for you to learn blockchain, and I don't think that this void would be filled anytime soon. Whether we see what happened with digital marketing, whether we see what happened with the sort of first decade of game development, or SEO, or influencer marketing, or how to become an influencer. I think where careers and technology changes really fast, the structured learning part actually takes some time. So, uh, like it is the case for blockchain as well, we do have a lot of online resources. Um, I think the world is definitely getting much and much flatter and smaller in terms of sharing expertise and knowledge. And I think with the entire decentralization movement, as well as community building movement, which is really behind it, I think the best way to learn about blockchain, careers, knowledge, whether that's development, marketing, how to become a content creator, how to start a DAO, what that all means is definitely to be part of a active community and learn from there. I don't think people should wait for a structured course to actually come in to kickstart this journey.
Definitely a great point. Moving on to Akshat, what are your thoughts about the industry and how people can think about it?
Sure. So, just to build on to what Anshul said, so I think a very easy way to think about this is that the career paths are not structured anymore, right? I mean, for example, if I consider my career path itself, I started out working in non-profit organization. Then I did my MBA. I worked in consulting even before MBA. Then I switched to working with a series, a range of different industries. Then social media, all that stuff. Bottom line is that there is no structured course, right, to navigate these type of career paths. Now we need to understand fundamentally as to why this is happening. Reason is fairly simple, that the world is changing at a very brisk pace. So expecting that, hey, if I do course X, I will get outcome Y. So that thought process is might not work out in how the world is shaping up. That's a very important point to consider. So please don't wait for a course here. Of course, learn from different courses. If there are courses that add value to you, definitely go and pick it up. But don't enroll in a structured course that, you know what, it's only when I do a BTech in blockchain or something, then only I can become like a blockchain developer. No, you have to understand where the industry is growing or going and accordingly restructure your career paths. And for this, you need to have the ability or cultivate the ability to learn on your own.
Definitely in interesting points, and I 100% agree with. Also, by the way, other career fields also opening up. Not expecting you to have a proper degree. I'll with this quick introduction, quick 5 minute introduction into what we are actually going to discuss, we can actually move into the questions. And I'll start with I'll start with a couple of technical questions that I think we can gear towards Anshul as well, since that's one of the things that we at Zionverse have been working on as well, which is what are the so Akshat Thakur asks what are the basic software skills we should know to get into this industry. Akshit asked, also kind of expanded on that a little bit, but Anshul, from your perspective, what is the most valuable skill I need if I want to get into this industry as a developer? I'd also, by the way, like to add a follow up question to this same thing. If I'm not a technical person and I want to still get started as a blockchain, so we've had those comments that we have people who are doctors and they want to get into blockchain development as well. What would you suggest them to do? Start at least a starting point.
Sure. So let me first tackle sort of the technical and the development part, and then I'll maybe expand a little bit on the non-technical or non-development part of it. I think all areas are technical. It's just different technical skills required, whether you are a marketing person or a content developer or an artist. So on the software development part, I think the best way to actually start is to build a foundation on JavaScript. As far as front end development is concerned, even in the Web3 space, we are definitely a lot of the apps are or decentralized apps are being built on web first. So whether that's knowledge of React JS, Next.js, integration with Web3 contracts using Web3 JS, or even skills as far as Solidity is concerned, which is used to code smart contracts on Ethereum. Um, if you have a good foundational knowledge of JavaScript, that actually will help you quite a lot. In case on the technical development or software development side, people are more interested on seeing how to create 3D environments, how to create game physics, whether that's used in mobile environments or web or AR or VR. The foundational knowledge would be of C++. So once you have a good basic understanding of C++, whether that's Unity, which uses C Sharp, or other sort of game frameworks, the C++ foundational knowledge was actually helped quite a lot. I also feel that we are definitely living in an era where no code formats are gaining a lot of importance. So even if you are like Shivam, you mentioned, even if you're a doctor who wants to start doing smart contract development, you do have a lot of frameworks like Modales, where you can actually start getting a lot of templates. Now, there, the technical skill that you are learning is really to look at algorithms, different ecosystems, work with
I'm sorry,
interact with.
Anshul, we actually lost your voice there a quick bit.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Yeah, better, but I think maybe you can move the network if that's possible after this question.
Sure. I think this is the same issue we had last time. I'll probably move to using it on mobile. So if you start building these smart contracts using no-code environments and use frameworks like Morales, you can actually really start understanding how different ecosystems work and how what is the data flow that actually happens from one ecosystem to the other, and then really focus on the architecture side of it. When I say architecture, what you're really understanding is how data flows from one of these environments to another environment, what gets validated, what is this underlying blockchain and consensus sort of protocol that people are talking about, and what is the data that I get back, etc. So you do not there necessarily need to have knowledge of exactly the language in which you are coding, because a lot of that format would be taken care of by the no code apps itself. So that's on the software development side of things. Apart from that, obviously the amount of careers and opportunities available in Web3 are infinite, right? Like if you are an artist, whether 2D or 3D, there's a lot of work that you can do. NFTs, at least so far, have predominantly remained an area where digital art is what is actually driving the NFTs. And even for us, where we are really pitching playable NFTs, which is a lot more than digital art, the digital art itself will always remain very important as to what the look is of the NFT, what the look is of the metaverse that you're actually playing for. Same applies for animation. So, if you are someone who is really interested in that area, then doing 3D modeling and understanding sort of animation becomes really important. Same actually goes for marketing and building community. So one of the things that it will become really important and how marketing change is more and more as we get into metaverse and Web3 applications, we will have to reach communities where they are. They will not necessarily be found on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn and Twitter. We are definitely transitioning. So Discord is a great example, right? It's definitely one area where you will find communities directly. Reddit is another example, and this will be an evolving area where you will find communities, and hence reaching the communities and how you communicate with them will actually also evolve. So this will be a skill that people do not know yet, and do not may not have right now, and this will be a very very important part of ecosystems like Zionverse will actually grow, because unless you are able to find the right people to build your community and keep the communities engaged, any technical ecosystem or anything that you do is actually going to be pointless. So I think there's a lot of changes that are coming in non-software development areas, which will require you to have different technical skills, and there's a lot of opportunity there.
And Akshat, I'd also like your 2 cents. Also, given your
Mhm.
experience as a consultant and now also as a content creator, you get to interact with a lot of people. What are the trends that you see in the non-technical side as well? I think, and what's your suggestion to people? Because I think content creation is also something that has opened up for a lot of people, which practically did not exist. Let's say like 7 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, even.
Mhm. Right. So, the way I see it, the story is not going to be too different from how it has shaped up for like Web 2 startups, so to say. Right. For example, right now, if you want to get a job with Google, or if you want to work with Meta, or if you want to work with any leading technology firm, then what are your options? Right. One, you can be from a tech background. You would know coding. You would know bunch of technical stuff, right? So that's your one option. Second would be product managers. So product managers do not necessarily need to come from tech background, right? They, even at Google, people get in from MBA schools, right? Majority of the product managers get from MBA schools, right? Then you will have marketers, you will have advertisers, you will have people who are building distribution, bunch of different things, right? So the same story will play out in Web 3.0 startups, right? The underlying structure does not change at all, right? So from that particular perspective, there will be core jobs, and then there will be peripheral impact of Web3 startups. What do I mean by that? So for example, if you're looking to work in management consulting, then expect BCGP and McKinsey to also do a lot of projects in the blockchain space subsequently, right? I mean, all the major firms, for example, Microsoft is trying to build a metaverse. Now if they're hiring consultants, management consultants, and you don't know anything about metaverse, then it's a problem, right? From that angle, despite you working in a core business centric role. So therefore, you need to at least have a functional understanding of what is happening. Otherwise, you will struggle even in these peripheral career paths. And then subsequently, right? I mean, as Anshul was saying that hey, there can be like core jobs. He has already covered that, so I'll not repeat that. And then you would have product manager type of jobs, right? People who have that 360-degree viewpoint on things. If new NFT is being launched, or if a new project has been launched, then you would need intelligent people to go and communicate that from the firm side. You would need to rally communities. You will need to build communities. You will need to explain your value add, because one of the core problems in the in the Web 3.0 space, be it NFTs, be it blockchain, new blockchain networks, be it different cryptocurrencies, is that there is a lot of inherent inertia, right, that people have, because this is something new and the people are skeptical, no doubt about that. So your job as someone who is leading communications, be it in form of marketing or be it in form of community building outreach, would be to simplify narratives, right? So for that, it's very important to understand the power of storytelling, the power of how to explain things in a simple, lucid manner, and the other key things that what marketers are currently doing, right?
Definitely.
Shivam,
Yeah,
am I?
yep, yep,
I
100%. So, I think there are a lot of people, as we have another question, Neil as well, on the commerce background. How can uh, debut into the industry? I think uh, that answers that. And from let's also maybe Akshat, a couple of words on this influencer economy, and also the content creator part. I think it might be directly or indirectly related to the blockchain field, right? uh, it's not technically uh, same as having a job in the blockchain field, but more or less become an integral part, or you stand a chance to become an integral part of the industry within that geography, if you are like a regional language creator, for example, right? What are your thoughts
Mhm.
around that, and what do you think, rather, where do you think are we heading from that perspective, as we see more and more creators
Mhm.
jump onto platforms like YouTube and try and build uh, their YouTube channels as well as other social media platforms, not just from a hobby perspective, but they're looking at it as a, oh, I want to start my own business. So it's kind of the new small business format.
Right. So, folks, basically the point regarding the influencer slash creator economy is, or rather, I'll just restrict to speaking about building a presence on social media, right, and especially personal branding. This is a highly winners take all market. Okay, so basically, what happens here is that if you are in top 1%, right, it's like playing cricket, right? So if you are a very good cricketer, right, if you are in top 1%, you are playing international cricket matches, you are playing state level, or you are playing Ranji Trophy, or if you are playing IPL, then yes, that's a viable career path. If you are just playing cricket as a hobby, then it's a really bad career path from that angle. And honestly speaking, and this is not a message to dissuade anyone from creating content, definitely do try, experiment, see if you enjoy this. But it's a very lonely journey, right? Because you have to stay in front of your camera, write scripts, whatnot. And at the start, there is just no one, right? I mean, for a very long period of time. And you would there will be like substantial years when you might not be making any money from it, right? So it's a very lonely journey to begin with, right? That's one. So it's not for everyone. That's the message that I want to give out, right? Second is that it's a winner take all type of a market, right? Where top, if you are not in top 3-4% creators, then you will struggle, right? From this angle. So that is my take. This is not, I'm not speaking from a intent of dissuading anyone from trying out. Definitely do try out, but I just want to give out the message because people only see the rosy side of it, right? That what, people are getting like so much traction, making YouTube videos, this that. Yes, because they might have been at it for a very long period of time, or they have some kind of competitive edge. YouTube is not easy anymore, right? I mean, that's what I would say, because there is just a lot of competition now, right, on that space. So,
Maybe I'd like to add a couple cents on that. There is
yeah,
this
definitely.
very so there is this metric by TubeBuddy. On an average,
Mhm.
if a channel has, if I'm not wrong, I think about 100K subs, on an average they would have created about 1200 videos. That's an average. So there we'll find some channels with videos, but more often than not it's going to be more than 600, 700 videos. So kind of that's what we are looking at. So
So yes, so Shivam was speaking about the TubeBuddy stats. So TubeBuddy is basically an analytics platform where you can go and figure out that, hey, for 100,000 views, if you are getting on an average, or if you have 100,000 subscribers, then people would have created roughly 1,200 videos to reach there. And in order to create 1,200 videos, even if you're putting out like one video a day without fail, right? So it takes these days, roughly 3.5, 4 years, right, to get to that point. So it is not easy, right? So that's what I'm getting at. But a good litmus test here would be that just create a few pieces of content and see if you're enjoying it and if you can do it on a sustainable basis, right? Because if this does not align with what you want to do, right, and if this is not something that you would enjoy doing on consistent basis, then it can't be done as a profession, right? Because in office sometimes what happens is that despite having like a lot of support, a lot of teammates, etc., it really, we might not like the office work, but we like the ecosystem that you go meet your friends, hang out, and bunch of other good things associated with it. But in content creation, you are alone, right? Especially at the start, at least for like the first 1 year, right, roughly speaking. And there, if you are trying to create content day in and day out alone, and if you're not even enjoying that, then even, yeah, surviving for like 365 days in that industry will be really tough.
Agreed,
I would
agreed.
love to add. I would love to add one more thing. Obviously, both of you are experts at this. But one, in addition, a view I have for Web3 is going to be that this is also going to be something that we have to watch and see how it changes. Obviously, with YouTube and Instagram, and Akshat is absolutely right. I 100% agree that it is a winner take all market. The one thing that we would have to watch, and I actually personally hope that this is going to happen, is that the communities are going to not all be at one place itself. So there will be an opportunity that, if you are able to connect, and the platforms could remain the same, i.e., it could be that, what Discord is today, uh, either Discord or an equivalent platform becomes the place where people are there. But instead of it being very centralized, i.e., controlled by an algorithm which determines, discovery of content, it actually remains very peer to peer, like by and large Discord is today. So my hope is that the way, and it obviously has its pros and cons, because by making it a more peer to peer community, discovery becomes more expensive, but also the benefit becomes that you are able to, if you have a particular style, you are able to connect to your community and actually retain that community for a much longer time. What I mean by that is that, this aspect of winner take all, that if you are either an influencer who, once you cross a certain threshold of, say, a million sort of subs, you will start growing, and you will grow, much more exponentially, versus if you're only at 10,000, it's tough for you to monetize also, because the algorithm will not drive many ads towards what you do. I think in terms of Web3 communities, if the world remains sort of a little bit fragmented where you have to reach the communities directly, I think the marketing aspect and the content making aspect becomes very different. So I'll give an example of this. I'm already seeing certain people do this where they actually have become, so there are a lot of virtual lands being sold on different metaverses, right? And for a lack of better word, I am seeing that a lot of people are actually building their career as virtual real estate brokers, right? Where their idea is to actually say take land of what is happening with Sandbox or Decentraland or some of the newer systems like Ember Sword, etc., that are coming up, and they are actually building their content and their expertise in tapping communities which are interested to buy these lands. And pretty much like what a real estate broker does, they are really breaking down the information, giving various options, figuring out if you want to buy a particular set of land in Decentraland, who are the owners, and actually get that transaction done. So this isn't exactly an idea of only a content creator, but even businesses which I couldn't have imagined are actually coming to Web3, and we will see sort of how this evolves. But I do feel that there is a very decent chance that communities do become more decentralized and hence fragmented, and it will not remain a winner takes all market.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So, just building on that point that Anshul just made, actually, what happens is that, for example, right now we are interacting on Discord, and from time to time, you would have seen creators doing like Instagram Live and YouTube Live, all that stuff. Problem there is that this is still a very non-immersive experience, right? In metaverse, this the the landscape itself changes quite a lot. For example, if you can go and speak and meet with 10 people, vis-a-vis here, if you're speaking with a Discord community where there are 222 people listening, the the type of experience becomes is very impersonal in a way, right? From anything that is there on Web 2.0, right? I mean, this has been tried. The best form we have is right now is probably like Zoom meeting, right? Where you're just meeting a team of 5 people, and I'm sure that during your office meetings also, people turn off their camera and then start looking at their phone. So that's a very impersonal way, and there is a huge bridge that needs to be bridged between an in-person meeting and a Zoom meeting. So that bridge is what can be bridged through Web 3.0, more specifically metaverses.
That's a
Uh,
excellent point.
eh,
I think that's a great point actually.
that's definitely
Right. So,
a really
all
good
right. So,
point.
Anshul, I'll ask like a few questions which I think might benefit our audiences. Right. So, if let's do a very quick Q&A, right? Sort of say. So, for
Sure.
example, if college students have to pick up like 3 skills right now, what would you advise as someone who has built a startup in this space?
So I think one of the key skills for me is really to look at what is the architecture of what we are building. And when I talk about again architecture, I'm really saying that I think one of the key skills for people to understand is all of technology is based on what is the data flow itself, right? And really, whether you are a tech person or a non-tech person or marketing or even an artist, what you really have to understand is how data flows between these ecosystems, right? So even if you're doing SEO, what is the data that actually goes to a Google's algorithm? You may not know in detail what it does, but you know the output it produces and what is the data that flows back to you. So one would be really understanding this architecture and deconstructing that. The second would be very like you actually said it, is very important what is your skill of storytelling, right? Whether you have to tell a story, because at the end, whether you have to convince employees, whether you have to convince investors, whether you have to convince a community, I think the skill of storytelling and what your vision is and how you can sort of render that vision and keep taking it from a very high level of detail to the lowest level of detail, depending on who you are talking to, is an extremely important part. So whether you are pitching yourself to get a job or get funding, really, really critical skill, and it is becoming more and more important because you have to separate out sort of the meat of conversations from a lot of noise that's actually happening. And the last
Right.
aspect I will say will be very dependent on what is the area of interest. So if your area of interest is technology, just be an expert in one language and one framework. If your area of interest is art,
Mhm.
then be really good at one aspect. You could be really good at Adobe Photoshop, you could be really good at Blender. It doesn't matter. I think what is really important and what you yourself would need to be convinced is, if you can master one skill and you understand how to master one skill, it'll be much easier for you to start mastering other skills. So even if you're great at art, it actually becomes very easy for you to start learning a language because you now know how to become an expert in one aspect, right? And so that's what I really truly believe, that whatever your passion is, just definitely try to become at least an expert in that area that you are oriented for. So those will be my three
Right.
areas, Akshay.
All right, right, right. So just building on, right? I mean, and just twisting the question a little bit. A lot of commentary that I personally get to read on social media around Web 3.0 is that what government intervention might become too extensive. So I think this is a very important point for us to clarify that uh, blockchain does not mean cryptocurrency, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
something that a lot of people get confused with. Blockchain is a meta application on which cryptocurrencies are built. So cryptocurrencies are a very small subset, right, of the entire blockchain narrative. So what we are trying to tell you is that if you actually go and read one of the announcements that was made recently by Ministry of IT India, that they are also structuring a fund around blockchain. They are also building like a lot of applications around the blockchain, right? So even if you don't believe in all this cryptocurrencies, NFTs, etc., etc., the indications are very clear that hey, we are moving towards Web 3.0. Everyone is supportive about blockchain, right? It's not as if that It's just like people who believe in cryptocurrencies and NFTs are supporting blockchain. Everyone universally supports blockchain because this is where the world is heading. So, my number one tip here would be, I'll not speak of three skills, but my number one tip, and uh, I'll ask Anshul also to comment on this, is, and he can give more clarity on this, is that to what extent you can do a prognosis of where the world is moving. This is very important in anything that in which some new tech is coming up, right? Because you might try to specialize in particular things. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, you start learning about solidity, and if after 2 years solidity is not viable anymore, then what happens? So therefore you must do a little bit of prognosis also, because that can give you like compounded returns.
So I totally agree with you that there is a little bit of a bet, but my I think what I'll also say is that if you start with solidity, and let's say there are a number of cases in which Ethereum doesn't remain sort of the biggest blockchain where dApps are actually built, and maybe Cardano takes over or Polygon takes over or some other blockchain comes that takes over, and the language, like if it is Solana, is actually Rust. But if you have actually understood how that system works, it'll be easier for you to adapt. So I think I agree with you, Akshay. I'm only just making a broader point, like you are saying, where if you are able to get to one of the systems and understand it, but understand it really well, your move to the other systems which come up, which will naturally happen. It's like what we are going to build today and what we think is not going to be the what will be the biggest case 5 years from now, because technology is changing. So your adaptation and the rate of adaptation will actually also be pretty fast. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So it's very similar to the C++ story, right? That people start learning like basic stuff like C++, then they move to Java, .NET, etc. So yeah,
Right.
so same progression might happen here also from a technical viewpoint. Very quickly, Anshul. So, if people who are so there are like two. So we spoke for like one set of people who are looking to get into the tech side of it. We also spoke about from a content creator slash marketing side of it. Now, people who are looking to build startups, what are like very quickly, right? I mean, if you can bullet out 4 or 5 key things that they should keep in mind.
Um, See, I like everyone looks at solving a startup problem in a different manner. I'll at least say how I think I look at it, which hopefully gives some insight. I think what I'm really looking at is what are the use cases that people really want, and I'm obviously trying to predict this for the next 5 or 6 years rather than what the reality is today itself. Because I
Mhm.
think the best way to build a startup which actually creates very large impact, and in turn also then creates very large value for yourself, for your employees, for your investors, etc., will be when you are correct on predicting what happens 5 to 10 years from now, and you have done a great job at executing to that particular area. And for that, I think what to me, I think people should really start looking at what is the innate demand that us as humans have, right? So whether that connection will always remain a very innate demand. So we will always want to connect with each other and communicate with each other. And like you rightly said, whether it's YouTube where it's more broadcasting, whether it's Zoom where it becomes very impersonal, immersive communication is something that we always like we always like in-person meetings compared to a phone call, and prefer that. um, it is because it is a lot more immersive to have an in-person meeting. So this is a very basic thing, but how can we actually build products which are technically possible for us to able to
Mhm.
execute? So I think
So,
the
so let
basic
me let
idea
me
for me
let
would be
me get
find
like
the
even
use
more.
case.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So yeah. So apologies there. So very quickly, man. So I mean, see, the so if I think about it from a person who is, let's say, looking to build a startup in this space, then every narrative looks amazing, right? In the
Hmm.
Web 3.0 space. If I speak about like metaverses, okay, great narrative, right? If I speak about launching a new blockchain or a cryptocurrency, great narrative. If I speak about, right from structuring simple ideas to complex idea, it's like the new internet, right? So I mean, it's like
Hmm.
the late 90s, early 2000 craze that anything internet based was gaining a lot of traction because internet was a new network itself. It was converting physical world into digital world. Now here,
Correct.
when we are moving from web 2.0 to web 3.0, again we are converting the immersiveness of uh, the entire immersiveness ecosystem. So literally everything that is on web 2.0 can be potentially turned into web 3.0, right? So right from DeFi, right from gaming ecosystems, right from learning ecosystems, everything can be converted into Web 3.0. So, is there a way, or is there like a framework that you have, or have you thought more about it? How is it? Because here the problem is not that hey my idea will add value or not. The problem is that there are so many choices. How do I pick the best one?
See, this is where actually I will say that this is where the part where most entrepreneurs talk about that this is the problem that I. So the way I look at it is this a problem that I face, and am I a customer of
Mhm.
the startup that I'm building, right? So one of the lenses that I have always put on the products I have built is, am I going to be a customer? And if I am a customer, I then look at the next lens, which is, are there many people like me? And if that answer is that yes, there will be many people like me, I am a customer, so I really understand why I will actually use it, then that's the product I focus on personally, right? Which is why they always say that as an entrepreneur, this problem needs to be personal to you, not only because you have insights, but you also have the belief that you can actually do it. Because none of this journey is just going to be like hunky dory and go up. And you're absolutely right. There will be times when there will might be some bubble scenarios, a lot of noise coming because people are building, then a crash following it, etc. The only way to keep building it with conviction is if you yourself are convinced that
Mhm.
this is a problem you want to solve for either yourself and people like you. That's at least the filter I put.
Got it. And okay, so I think one more problem that a lot of people who are looking to build a startup in this space will face is that you know what, this entire blockchain thing, it might require a lot of funds from my side because this is not like as simple as just buying a website and launching something, right? So
Mhm.
how do I go about it, right? I mean, if I have a specific idea in mind, should I raise funds? Should I not raise funds? At what stage should I raise funds, or start thinking about it? So how would you? What would be your recommendations around this?
So, look, you obviously need resources to build because what the product is being built now, like you rightly said, immersive part of Web 2 is definitely complex. Hence, you need a much larger team, much more resources on the technical side, much more resources on the community side. The great aspect is that today there is a lot of pull, right? Pull
Mhm.
effectively is that there's a lot of attention that people are paying in the what is happening in the Web3 startup space and the Web3 businesses space. So investors
Correct.
have a lot of attention. The community has a lot of attention. There are many aspects that you can do for fundraising. You could obviously, if you have
Mhm.
the community, you can actually go and raise it from the VCs. But even if that's not the case, you actually directly go to the community, and that's the beauty about Web3. So, we have obviously raised money from institutional investors, but an alternative would have been to come to the community with Lakshmi NFT itself and say, guys, this is what we are really trying to build, and can we first sell the Lakshmi NFT to actually fund ourselves? And many startups have actually done that. So the beauty about
Mhm.
Web3 is that now, because there's a lot of attention already, and because of tokenization, your customers directly can actually fund you, right? So it's almost can be accessed through Discord. Not you don't even need
Right.
a
Mhm.
Kickstarter front end to actually go for it.
Right, right, right. So, a couple of quick points there, guys, from my experience. So, one is that if you are, so Anshul spoke about two options. One is that you can go to institutional investors, for example, VC funds, hedge funds, etc., and try to raise money from them. Right. The issue here is that many a times early founders lose out a lot of equity. Right. So, just like a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking with a founder and he was pitching a certain idea. I asked him that, you know, what is like the shareholding structure of the company right now. So the poor person had already diluted 25% of his equity, right? For getting like very basic help, right? Like making hiring decisions, etc. To some VCs, right? Which did not make a lot of sense to me. But there is an advantage of going the early VC route that you get a lot of credibility because, especially in NFT space or cryptocurrency space, if you're backed by VCs early, then the good news is that there is a lot of inherent trust. The option two, as Anshul was speaking, is that go to the community itself and try to crowdsource it in a way, right? So from that angle, that is that is a medium through which you would not dilute a lot of equity per se, but the issue might be that you would have trouble generating that instant trust in a very quick manner, right? So there are pros and cons to it, but and of course, like, I mean, we can't give you like a checklist here, but we can definitely speak about the pros and cons. That if you're going the VC route, be considerate about the equity that you're losing, and if you're going by that tokenization route or by the community route, then make sure that you have some game plan to build trust for the startup that you're launching.
Akshat, one of the questions I would love for you to maybe address as well is, since you are also in the education space, how do you see sort of edtech and the skills and courses market actually evolving in Web3?
Right. So, multiple things, right? So, one is that in terms of course immersiveness, right? Right now, we have a very instruction driven. So, okay, then if we understand, so here is a great stat for you, right? So, for example, people who sign up for MOOC courses, massive online open learning courses, when you start taking a course, or when 100 people start taking a course, only 5 of them will end up completing it, right? So that's how much the dropout rate is on these massive MOOCs, which are taught by professors like Robert Schiller, who is a Nobel winning economist, right? So from that perspective, no, it's not a quality issue that the education has, but it's more about the structure and delivery issue, right? Where despite such good teachers teaching on open platforms, there is just not enough traction and just not enough completion rate, right? So this problem can be solved to a very large extent by through educational metaverses, so to say, right? In a way that this problem of immersiveness can be addressed. And again, like, I mean, that's just one layer of problem that could be addressed directly. Similarly, there can be 10 other value adds that can be created in our metaverse ecosystem, right from creating, right from like having more structured classes, right from improving customized learning outcomes, right from peer-based learning, right from immersiveness. So the options are endless, literally. Yeah.
Got it. Great. Maybe I don't know. Shivam, are you able to hear us? I think I was able to hear you, but not Akshat. I know there might be a few more questions. Shall we take a couple more questions?
Do that. Can you hear? Can you both hear me now?
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Alrighty. So definitely an interesting conversation. I'm enjoying being here personally. Um, when you guys were talking about, I guess there were two things. One was the VC interest into the Web3 protocols and the rush towards the Web3 protocols. What are your thoughts around that? And also, by the way, a follow up question around the point of how um, I think is it should be it could be the first question that you guys answer is how a blockchain can exist without a crypto, because that's something that's missing, or that's also kind of more or less the education perspective, because right now everybody thinks about blockchain, they say, oh, cryptocurrency, right? But what they're not aware of is, for example, the private blockchain that these big banks have, or even IBM has running, right? You guys can talk about that, and then we can address in the ecosystem as well.
Sure. So let me quickly cover the blockchain part, Anshul, and then I think the remainder questions around VCs you can take it up.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So essentially, like from a blockchain perspective, now blockchain can also be layered from a centralized to a very decentralized ecosystem, right? If we are imagining a spectrum, on the left hand side there will be highly centralized systems, on the right hand side there will be highly decentralized systems. Now, an easy way to think about this is through politics. For example, if you consider something like Kim Jong Un, right? So he is highly centralized, right? I mean, everything is under his control, and therefore North Korea is a highly centralized economy and centralized politics, right? On the right hand side, you would have something like US, which has democracy, right? So that will be to a very large extent decentralized. I'm not saying completely decentralized. Now, same perspective exists on a blockchain network also. So Shivam was giving an example of major banks running their own blockchain network. So if you consider something like XRP, right, which is Ripple, now that is centralized in a way, right? And similarly, if you are taking a look at something like Bitcoin, it is highly decentralized in a way, right? Because there is no one person or one group of people who are controlling it. I also read commentary of like one of the major professors at a business school who was commenting on this, that you know what, because the Bitcoin is held like almost like, he gave some stat around it. I'm not able to recollect what the exact stat was, but his point of view was that hey, if there are 100 Bitcoins on the network, then 90 of those Bitcoins are held by some, let's say, top 15-20% people, right? That is not the definition of centralization, right? The definition in the blockchain world of centralization versus decentralization is that do you get equal access to opportunities, right? That is the bottom line. For example, Michael Slayer right now purchased like a couple of months back around 7,000 Bitcoins. No one is stopping you and me from buying the network. If we buying those Bitcoins, if we decide to buy, we can buy it. No one is stopping us, right? Or the institutions are not against us. That is decentralization, right? And yeah, this decentralization has a lot of power, right? Because it allows you to not get into situations like GameStop stock, right? So, for example, in the US, there was like a few months back, right? There was this entire saga of GameStop stock, right? So, what happened there was that retail investors got a whiff that hedge funds are shorting the stock, right, of a company called as GameStop. So the trading app itself suspended the trading of that particular stock. Now, retail investors could have made a lot of money, but they were, despite colluding, despite figuring everything out and creating a system to beat hedge funds, they were not able to do it. So yeah, so that is the entire saga of blockchain, right? I think we can have like a very detailed conversation on it, but yeah, the power of blockchain is not just limited to cryptocurrencies. The You need to think of blockchain from a point of centralization, from a point of utility, the point of freedom, right? That's what blockchain is. That blockchain, or a good blockchain network, a completely decentralized blockchain network, equates to freedom and everyone getting equal opportunities in terms of participating and rules not being twisted against you.
I think this is a great explanation, and the one thing I'll actually add to this for the cryptocurrency part, which Akshat is 100% right in my view, is to say that this is nothing to do with cryptocurrency only. There has to be something that needs to be given or quantified for the effort of validation in the blockchain. That right now is the currency, and the way to, and there is definitely a lot of speculation in cryptocurrency because predominantly these values are driven by an estimate of what would happen in the future, right? And right now there is not a lot of intrinsic value, and which is why there is a lot of volatility in these asset classes, and also fear of losing that control, that freedom being given and that power being given to the people. So I think Akshat explained it really well, that if you are today a centralized authority and you now suddenly see that blockchain can actually take away that power away from you, there would naturally be a resistance coming as well. So that's the other reason why there is probably a little more than a more negative reaction than maybe we would have seen otherwise. I'll move to answer the question for the VC part. I think obviously I'm assuming, Shivam, that you're asking this because of a lot of conversation that has happened recently, particularly with people like Jack Dorsey saying that it seems like Web3 is all being controlled by VCs. I think similarly, the function of VCs is actually to be an enabler, right? Now, whether it is the same thing that exactly what Akshat said, they may actually end up owning a share of companies which are actually building the infrastructure and building the ecosystems, but they are actually playing a very important role in terms of accelerating this progress. And just because they have equity participation or a percentage of tokens, that does not mean that they'll be able to control the decentralization aspect or the consensus aspect of it, right? The VCs don't have any motive to be able to come and control a particular digital ecosystem, because they are financial investors. They are really trying to maximize the financial output, and whatever the community wants finally will be what maximizes the financial output, right? So if there is a community which really wants decentralization and no control, and maybe let's say no single entity directly or indirectly can say control 2% of the tokens, and that's the only way to build a great valuable ecosystem, then that's what the ecosystem will be built, and that's what VCs would also start investing in and start abiding by, right? So I think this whole idea that VCs are investing and hence becoming the majority owners of ecosystems, and that is bad. I don't believe in it, because at the end of the day, the power will lie with the community as to which ecosystems become valuable and become powerful, and that's where eventually VCs will also go and invest, because they are looking for that financial return only.
Insightful. So on a tangent, I guess maybe the last question for the day I want to take. It's a very interesting question, and to be honest, when you hear about this question, I think Anshul, you'll agree. This question would deserve a 4 hour session in itself. Which is, could you talk about the scope of customer service in the blockchain field?
Could we talk about the scope of customer service till the
Customer
blockchain?
service. So for example, so what Inderjeet Bhagat, he's asked the question. He says, please explain more about customer service company built around blockchain. I am taking it in two ways, just to maybe explain it a bit further. One is all the blockchain projects, they need extensive customer service, given also the fact agar cryptocurrency hai, so it's a 24-hour thing. That's one. Second, also, you maybe know of or have like if you can explore ideas around, or what do you think about decentralized customer service?
Got it.
And
So let
I
me
think
take a
he's also, by
yeah,
the
let me
way,
take a crack
shared
at
that
it. Would love to also hear what Akshat says on this. Um, I think first part, this is something Akshat already mentioned, that there is still a lot of education that needs to happen on the blockchain part for all of us, right? Different people have different experiences and different amount of knowledge about what is happening in the blockchain world. But by and large, this is the beginning of it. So a lot of actually customer service, and also what we are also experiencing is that there is definitely an educational curve that actually needs to be crossed for people to get more idea and more knowledge about these ecosystems being created. So even before we go into this aspect that there is a cryptocurrency involved, and for ecosystems where suddenly the token is the central part where people are watching, then all that happens is that this entire community is only looking at one price going up and down. And when that price goes down, suddenly there is a lot of fear that is this a signal that the ecosystem won't work, and hence there is a failure coming, and hence my decision was wrong. And because there is not as much knowledge or understanding, it's an exaggerated sort of issue that actually happens. By the way, this happens with equity markets, which have been around for thousands of years actually. And even if you have a stock which is very old, let's call it HDFC, if the stock goes down, there is a lot of fear and panic that generally sets in. So one is an issue of education and knowledge which needs to be crossed, according to me. The second point of decentralization of customer service is actually really valid. I think what Web3 fundamentally is able to do is actually it's able to democratize capital, so that there is no barriers to actually be able to give capital to opportunities. So whether I am a Sequoia or whether I am a Anshul, or whether I'm anyone on this call, I should get access to that same opportunity. It might be that a Sequoia, being a very large VC, is able to put $1 billion, and Anshul, being a small retail investor, can only put $1, but I will also get access to it. Similarly, there is also a democratization of labor which will happen. Why that is important is eventually one of the things that blockchain is able to do is to say that if you are one of the people who is able to do this work, then you can come in without any barriers and without any permission, and hence permissionless, and fulfill that work can get a reward for it, right? So it's very, I think it's very possible to imagine, and this will happen for sure in my view, that your customer questions, your customer service is actually done by people who are not formally employed by the company, right? Someone comes and actually creates a system where if you can answer, questions of these customers, or help them, take them through the journey of the ecosystem, or fulfill whatever information requirements they have, this is the reward that we actually pay you. Now, this could be a proof of customer service system, a proof of fulfilling a query system, or an equivalent of what a proof of work system is. But this is the way I think customer service and a lot of work will actually get democratized and decentralized. Akshat, what's
Totally
your
think
what's your view?
Right.
I think
Oh,
Akshat has mentioned it in
yeah.
a video as well. That's why
Mhm.
I think the question.
Correct. So, two, three things, guys. So, first and foremost is that blockchain is a complex space because the idea behind blockchain is decentralization, right? So that's one of the building blocks. Decentralization also means that the customer himself or herself should educate, learn. That's very important, and should be able to do things on their own, right? It's like, for example, grandparents starting to use smartphones. Right now, they understand that what smartphones are good. It allows us to connect with our grandkids. It has definite advantage, right? But they struggle doing FaceTime sometimes, right? They struggle opening up the internet. They struggle connecting the Wi-Fi. Lot of different things, right? So, which brings me to the second point, that as the world moves towards Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, there will be people who would struggle in terms of using the technology around it. For example, if you're shopping on Metaverse and trying to get a physical delivery of that item to your house, whatever, right? Then you need customer support around it, right? So yeah, I mean, I think, and this even becomes much bigger compared to Web 2.0 because of the layers of complexity that is added right here. So, which brings me to third and final point, that if you're trying to build like a customer service center in this space, excellent options there, right? I mean, in terms of helping people out, what specifically would be the architecture of it, that remains to be seen. But I'm sure that it becomes like a convenience point, right? For example, if you're trying to buy cryptocurrency, or if you're trying to get some issue solved in terms of metaverse shopping or logging onto some metaverse network, all that, then yes, you do need techies who can the help people who are not very well versed with tech, but they have to use this Web 3.0 space because they see definite utility around it.
Uh, all right. It's I guess uh, on the closing note, do you have anything to add, Anshul?
No, just that I think this is a definitely a evolving area. As I think one of the things I'm myself taking away with what Akshat said is, anything immersive is actually going to be a great opportunity, and I think that's probably the best way to explain that there is infinite amount of opportunities actually coming. We are just at the beginning of this Web3, and there are a lot of careers which every day I come across, which I think it is very difficult to even imagine or forecast that these will be the requirements. So I think curiosity should probably be the number one thing that people should chase right now. And if you're curious about what is happening and connect with the right people in community and keep doing the work, there's a lot of interesting aspects to build in Web3.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. On wrap up the session, then guys, this was an amazing hour. Definitely an awesome session. And for people, we'll by the way also post this on social, so you guys can go through the session once again if you guys want to. Also for the future sessions, we'll do it in the same way. We'll have these questions as text, and definitely great response from everyone. Thank you, Akshat, for
Thanks,
taking out
guys.
the time. Thanks a lot,